Welcome to the August 14th, 2025 Planning Commission hearing. I will call the hearing to order at 1:01 p.m. Ms. Carmen, can we please have roll call?
Thank you, Chair Wardlow. I'll begin with Chair Wardlow.
Here.
Vice Chair Boss.
Present.
Commissioner Barnwell.
Here.
Commissioner Bauke.
Here.
Commissioner DeLuccio.
Here.
Commissioner Wiscombe.
Here.
We have quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's get started with preliminary matters, requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements, or ex-agenda items. Ms. Arciniega, do we have any?
Thank you, Chair Wardlow. We do not.
Do we have any announcements or appeals?
Chair Wardlow, we do have a couple of items to mention. So the 418 North Milpas mixed-use development project was heard on appeal at council on Tuesday. Council voted to deny the appeal and uphold the project approval. It should be returning to ABR next. The other is 633 East Cabrillo Boulevard. The Hilton addition project is scheduled for council on appeal at council on September 23rd.
Thank you. That takes us to item C, comments from members of the public pertaining to items not on today's agenda. Due to time constraints, folks will have 2 minutes. Ms. Carmen, do we have anyone in person or remote?
Thank you, Chair Wardlow. At this time, I don't have any speaker slips for in-person public comment for general, but if anyone in the room would like to speak, they can come up to the podium at this time. And I'm not seeing any movement. We don't have any participants online, and we did not receive any written correspondence for this item, so I'm going to give it back to you.
Thank you. We will now close general public comment. We'll move on to item 3, a concept review for a subdivision at 996 and 1000 West Mountain Drive. We have Ms. Plummer, Associate Planner, with us today to provide a presentation. Ms. Plummer, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Wardlow. I'm Pilar Plummer, Associate Planner with the City of Santa Barbara Planning and Zoning Division, and I'll be giving the staff presentation for this project, which is located at 996 and 1000 West Mountain Drive. The overall project description involves a proposal to split Lot 8 and Lot 9 in order to create 4 separate parcels. On the right is just a view of the drive access to Lot 8 from West Mountain Drive. In addition, the project would involve removal of 2 accessory development envelopes that are recorded on Lot 9, and then to create 2 envelopes for future residential purposes on proposed Lot B and Lot D. And I'll cover that in more detail when we look at the tentative map. Also, the project would address an enforcement case related to as-built grading that occurred on Lot 9. The purpose of this hearing is a voluntary conceptual review. I do want to note this was a recommendation by staff, and the applicant agreed that it would be beneficial to bring this to Planning Commission in advance of their formal submittal. The purpose is to receive Planning Commission feedback as well as public feedback in advance of the formal application. There's no discretionary action today, and there's no appealable decision. Future discretionary applications that would apply to the project if it moves forward is a tentative map to allow division of 2 lots into 4 lots, a modification to allow 2 parcels to be created without the required 100 feet of public street frontage, a waiver to allow service of more than 2 lots by a private road, and design review by the Single Family Design Board. This specifically is relating to the as-built grading that occurred. This is an overview of the project area. So the larger parcel is Lot 9. It is currently developed with an existing residence, garage, pool, and pool cabana, which you can see here. As well as there's a private road, we'll cover that in more detail, that waves around both lots, and Lot 8 is currently vacant with exception of a private access road, water line, fire hydrants, drainage improvements, and related utilities. Again, this is Mountain Drive, which winds up around the parcels, and it's also in proximity to Parma Park. So as some general background, these parcels were created as part of a prior tentative subdivision map, a 10-lot subdivision map that was approved by the Planning Commission in 1992. At the time, the Planning Commission also approved a waiver that would apply to this project if it moved forward to allow more than one lot to be served by a private road. Similarly, a street frontage modification to allow 3 parcels to not have 100 feet of public frontage, and a modification to exceed 500 square feet of aggregate accessory floor area. I do want to note as well with Title 30, that limitation of 500 square feet no longer applies. For parcels of this size, you could go up to 1,950 square feet of accessory floor area. In 2024, the applicant team submitted their pre-application review to the city to get staff feedback, and staff was in general in support of the project, particularly because the proposed parcels are intended to meet the lot density requirements for parcels that are exceeding 30% slope. I'll cover that in more detail. However, we did recommend this Planning Commission conceptual review because if you'll note in the staff report, one of the exhibits included the resolution related to that 10-lot subdivision, and it did include a condition against further subdivision. That doesn't preclude the applicant from submitting this project, but that is a condition that was placed. And I do want to point out, I reviewed the minutes from the Planning Commission meetings at that time in the file, and it's not fully clear why that condition was placed. It could be because it was involving 10 lots, but that's just something for you to note. As well, staff recommended it because this is in the extreme high fire hazard area. Comments from staff also included the discretionary applications that would be required in the future. Water supply did put a note, I included this in the staff report, that if a dedicated fire hydrant is required to serve lower ends of the parcels, then the project will need a private water main to supply the hydrant. And then Creeks Division requested that the applicant show the 50-foot creek setback from the top of bank of Sycamore Creek, which does traverse the portions of the site. So there's that. This is an overview. Right here is West Mountain Drive. So if you're entering Lot 8, you would take access from here. This parcel, which is also developed, also takes access from that same point. And then the road winds down. Right here, sort of in a more sunken valley, if you recall from the site visit, is the proposed envelope for Lot D. So as a reminder, Lot 9 currently has a residential envelope for the main house. It also has 4 accessory development envelopes, 2 of which are proposed to be removed, and 2 of which would be staying but would now be on the parcel for Lot B. So this is the proposed residential envelope for Lot D, and this is the area of as-built grading. We'll see that in some more photos, but that's the proposed envelope for Lot B to allow for future residential purposes. And the existing residence, 1000 West Mountain Drive, is proposed to remain. So these are 2 photos of the areas for the accessory envelopes that are proposed to be removed. So right here on the side, it's hard to see, but that includes portions of the private road that covers, this is specifically on Lot 9. So you can see the range and slope here, some more mature vegetation. Also immediately to the right of that is Sycamore Creek. So this particular envelope, while it probably is greater than 50 feet, it is closer to Sycamore Creek than the proposed envelopes. And then this is another area which has much more substantial vegetation and trees, and that's an accessory envelope that's proposed to be removed. So on the left, you'll see this is the area for proposed residential envelope on Lot D. Far less mature vegetation, though there is some sparse amounts here and there. This is that private road that goes through the site. And you can see it's sort of more sunken compared to other portions of the existing lots. And then this is the area where as-built grading occurred. You can sort of see some steps that go a little bit more down. But this is the residential envelope that's proposed for Lot B. And that envelope would cover all of the as-built grading area, so addressing the enforcement case. This is the proposed subdivision data. So to the left, you'll see existing. Lot 9 currently is 27.6 acres, and it has a 35% slope on average. Lot D, which is currently Lot 8, is 6.69 acres with a slope of 37, and this is the resulting. So Lot A would, previously Lot 9, would become Lot A and would be reduced to 11.5 acres. Lot B, which is south of Lot A, is the largest parcel and would contain 15.48 acres. And Lot C is the smallest, it's south of Lot D at 3 acres, but they all meet the minimum requirements. This is the average slope. So it's fairly consistent with the existing slope. I do want to say, and I'll cover this in more detail, that the slope percentages of the actual development envelopes is much less than that. So for municipal code consistency, the requirement for each of these lots, given the slope percentages, is a minimum of 3 acres. They are proposing to meet that requirement. And as I already mentioned, 2 of the lots don't have direct public street frontage of 100 feet off West Mountain or any other public road, so they would need a street frontage modification if the project were to be approved. In terms of slope density, I guess before I go in through all the details, this is the tentative map which you would have received as an exhibit. So this is 1000 West Mountain Drive with the house, pool cabana area, and then again it goes all the way down. So the existing parcel, this is the residential envelope. This is an accessory envelope, accessory envelope, accessory envelope, and accessory envelope. This envelope is proposed to be eliminated with the project, as well as this one. So if you'll think back on those photos, the one photo I presented that had some trees and then Sycamore Creek was going along this, that's the location of that one to be removed. And the one that had much more vegetation was in this location here. And then this is the area of the as-built grading, so that's the new residential envelope for Lot B. And then this is the new envelope for Lot D, that's more in that Sunken Valley portion. Lot C would retain the existing recorded envelope for residential purposes. And then in terms of the requirement, so the zoning ordinance mandates that for lots exceeding 30% average slope, it's 3 times the base zone, so 3 acres, which again, they are meeting that or proposing to meet that. The average slope of the actual development envelopes, however, so the area where they would be allowed to develop for future homes or other structures is between 9.6 and 22.68%. And in terms of the envelopes themselves, any future development would have to meet things like setbacks, open yard, parking, things like that. The square footage proposed is ranging between 10,767 and 12,900 square feet. So just conceptually, it seems like they would be able to meet all of those standards. This is just covering the street frontage. So this is just a view if you're standing on proposed Lot B in that residential development envelope. The one for Lot D is further down here. Again, you can see it slopes down. This is the private drive. That's an existing house back there. But 2 of the lots, these 2 here, Lot C and Lot B, of course, don't have direct access to West Mountain Drive and would require that street frontage modification. In general, just conceptually, this would likely be supported by staff because it avoids unnecessary grading, paving, unnecessary vegetation removal that would need to occur if you did want to have direct street access. And yeah, they also will have maintained access via easements. That would be something that would be required for the project. In terms of subdivision ordinance consistency, the project would need to be consistent with the general plan and zoning ordinance. It would be in the sense that it This is the RS1A zoning district, which allows for residential use and development. It also is intended to meet the lot area requirements based on slope. And there's no real anticipated damage to fish or wildlife. We still would need to go through environmental review with their formal project, but the proposed envelopes, and you'll see in another slide, are further away from Sycamore Creek and don't really contain much mature vegetation. This is the existing house. This is an approximate location for the envelope of the as-built grading area for Lot B. This gives you an overview, West Mountain Drive, of that road that covers the property. So it comes through here, winds down. This is the envelope for Lot D. This is the envelope for Lot B. So again, that's where the as-built grading is. There's some steps also. So the requirement is that each lot shall front upon a public street unless served by a private road serving no more than 2 lots. There is the option to have a waiver if there is access to the property, but the road needs to be adequate for fire suppression vehicles. So I do want to point out the original 10-lot subdivision did have that waiver approved by the Planning Commission. They would still need to have that evaluated, and staff would need to support that with this new project. But in general, at the time, it meant turnaround area with grading, construction, and provisions for maintenance required for that. They also were required to have an agreement for maintenance of that private drive that covers the site. And staff did go out, as well as fire, for a site visit. Actually, staff went out a couple times. And the roads in general are in pretty good condition, if you recall from the site visit. The project site is in the El Cielito neighborhood of the general plan, which has the most restricted density. We have LG14 as a policy for low-density residential areas to maintain and protect the character and quality of the single-family zone neighborhoods as a low-density residential community. The approximate location of the project site is here, and then again, that's Parma Park. In general, staff believes, just conceptually at this time, it would be consistent with the land use element, again, because they're meeting the most rigorous density requirements for lot area. In terms of the conservation element,
We'll take a brief recess while we fix the audio issue. Technical difficulties. Yeah, so to the right is just, again, an aerial of the 2 parcels, Lot 8 and Lot 9. The darker line represents major creek areas, and light blue is minor creek areas. So again, one of the accessory envelopes that's proposed to be eliminated is in this location here. And then the new envelope for residential purposes is here, so it's much further away from Sycamore Creek. And this is, again, that envelope proposed for Lot D, which is also further away from Sycamore Creek. The other accessory envelope proposed to be eliminated is down here.
which again, you can see it's much closer to Sycamore Creek. So we do have policies that state that development shall not degrade creeks or riparian environments, and the development shall not significantly modify natural topography and vegetation. Trees should be protected, and ridgeline development, which can be viewed from large areas of the community or by a significant number of residents, should be discouraged. Just in general, the proposed project seems to be consistent with this. Again, this envelope here is, in terms of topography of the site, on a lower elevation point. It's quite hard to see, just given the size of the parcels, as well as just where it's located on the property. And then this location here, while it is at a higher point, it would likely blend into the natural environment of low-density single-family residential neighborhood. So that's that. And then in terms of the safety element, we do have policies about avoiding grading on slopes greater than 30%. As already mentioned, the envelopes are all on average less than that. There's also policy S33 to implement programs that reduce risk of wildland and structure fires, and policy S37, which really has to do with appropriate site layout, building design and materials, landscaping maintenance, having road access, and fire vehicle turnaround. So this is just against where that proposed residential envelope would be for Lot D, and this is that existing roadway there. In terms of environmental review, also this is that existing drive. Sycamore Creek is along here. With the original subdivision, there was a negative declaration and initial study that were prepared. Really, the document mostly cited consideration for biological resources related to riparian oak woodlands and creek areas, and to avoid that. There was also a prohibition on grading for slopes exceeding 30%. One thing I would note is that there was a condition about if you were to remove oak trees, to replace them for a 10-to-1 ratio. So, I mean, at this point in the project stage, they haven't submitted their formal application. We would still be doing CEQA analysis with that new project to see if it's consistent with studies that have already been prepared, or if there's any new concerns we would need to look at. But the envelopes, just in general, because they're further away from the creek and don't contain much mature vegetation, it seems like it would be sufficient. And staff is recommending that the Planning Commission review the project conceptually and provide comment regarding the proposed subdivision, so to create 4 lots, and removal of the 2 recorded accessory development envelopes and creation of 2 envelopes for residential purposes on Lot B and D. So we would want a recommendation, but just a general summary of your comments is also sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Plummer. We will now hear from the applicant team. Please come up and state your full name and your relationship to the project. You will have 15 minutes to present. Ms. Carmen, will you please start the timer?
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Wardlow and Commissioners. I'm Laurel Perez with SEPS Land Use Consulting, representing the Semler family. With us here today are Barry and Colton Semler. And I wanted to thank Pilar Plummer for an excellent staff report, very thorough. Kind of did my job, so I'll try to go through this quickly and appreciate the attention that Ms. Plummer has provided to us over the last year and a half or so as we've been making our way through this preliminary review process. And then I just got to make sure I got this. Okay. And thank you to those who were able to make the site visit earlier this week. I hope that was informative. The 2 properties, as we've discussed, to be split have a combined total of 34 acres. One of the properties is developed, as you understand, and the other one is presently vacant. Just a bit of history here. So the 1992 approval resulted in 10 lots identified as the Primavera Estates. That tract map was recorded in 1997. Development envelopes were located on each of the lots, and in this case, we have a total of 6 development envelopes between the 2 lots. And 3 of those 10 lots have been developed to date. At the time, roads, water lines, fire hydrants, Other infrastructure were installed meeting and in some cases exceeding city requirements. And this next slide identifies that. A 12-inch water main, originally it was required to be 8-inch, but they upsized it, given this location in the high fire area, was installed along West Mountain Drive for over a mile. So it benefited not just this subdivision, but many other properties along West Mountain Drive. Fire hydrants were installed every 500 feet. 2 additional hydrants, we've heard from fire department, would be required with this proposed lot split. The subdivision improvements were constructed on top of a geotechnical grid for added stability, given slope issues in this hillside area. And the roads were built with more road base and aggregate than needed in order to support heavy vehicles, including, of course, 30-ton fire department fire trucks. Also, 2 70-foot wide turnarounds were installed as part of the project subdivision that would serve this lot split proposal that's before you. The Semler family's lived on this property now for, over 40 years. I think has owned it for closer to 50. So they're well aware of the concerns in this area. And in fact, I know that there's a firefighter in the family. This is really a family project that's before you, and I'll get into that in a minute. But I wanted you to know that there's a tremendous amount of attention being placed on fire safety, access safety, turnaround, avoiding slopes, and avoiding the flood potential that exists for some of the development envelopes that were in fact recorded with the 97 subdivision. These are the envelopes that we're talking about here. You can see all 6 highlighted in yellow. With the project, the 2 highlighted in red would be eliminated. Those are the 2 that are closest to the creek, and replaced with 2 envelopes highlighted in yellow. So there would be no net change in the number of development envelopes that recorded with the original map. Understanding that some of those development envelopes were accessory envelopes, hearing staff's presentation, accessory structures now can go up to 2,000 square feet in terms of the city limits, approximately 2,000 square feet. So in each of these envelopes, you could potentially have a significant amount of development. And we think it's valuable to be removing those 2 that are closest to the creek on steeper slopes than the 2 that are proposed. Just a quick summary here. Again, this just involves 2 lots, resulting in a total of 4, ranging in size from approximately 3 acres at the smallest to over 15 acres at the largest. Complies with the average slope density requirements. Again, removes 2 previously recorded development envelopes, replacing them with envelopes that we believe are more aligned with current city policies. Again, further away from the creek and on more shallow or less steep slopes. I'm showing this plan. I think this is an important one. Of course, the properties are highlighted there in yellow. And what this identifies is that there are over 10 other parcels within the immediate vicinity that are 3-acre parcel sizes or less. In some cases, 1.4 acres. And so the smallest of the 2 parcels that we're talking about would be compatible with the existing surrounding neighborhood in terms of size. Again, this proposal would allow us to abate an existing pending enforcement case that involved grading. And just a little bit of background there. We've been working with city building staff on this for quite some time. They've been to the site many times. We really appreciate the assistance they've provided. But the grading I wanted to share with you resulted really as an effort to remove avocado trees that had died on this knoll. Smoothing it out, flattening it out, in preparation for what was going to be a family wedding, which did not happen. It involved approximately 500 cubic yards of material, which would require a city grading permit. So that is the abatement case that this project would help to address by identifying a development envelope in the location of the as-built work. We've had a visit with city fire staff. We appreciate their involvement. I understand that they may be here today to address any questions that you may have. They have provided their, review of the proposal and have indicated that the project appears to meet Fire City Department requirements. The turnarounds are very helpful. The large 12-inch water line is extremely helpful. The project would require 2 additional hydrants that would be installed if approved. We've also had several site visits, as I mentioned, with city building staff to address the grading enforcement case, and of course site visits with Community Development Department to review the development envelope locations to confirm in fact that they are in preferred locations over the 2 that would be removed that have already been recorded with the prior map. So a couple more pictures of those envelopes that exist today. This is one of the development envelopes that would be removed. You can see the slope on this, and again, it's much closer to the creek. Here's the second one, a tremendous more vegetation than on either of the 2 proposed envelopes, and again, much closer to the creek. Recognizing the importance of visual resource protection, the next several slides I'll click through fairly quickly, but they identify from all the public views we could gather, what you could and really what you can't see of the proposed 2 development envelopes. So this is a photo key map. And these are views from Mountain Drive, looking toward the 2 proposed envelopes. This view, number 5 on the left, is a view from Mountain Drive looking at one of the existing recorded development envelopes that would be removed. So this is actually probably more visible from Mountain Drive than the proposed envelope on Lot 9. The view on the right identifies that same envelope, so the box on the right would be removed and replaced with the box that's on the left, where the as-built grading occurred. This is a view from Parma Park. And again, more views from the street. Just given the topography and the existing vegetation, it's really difficult to see these from any public view. Again, another view from Mountain Drive. This is a blow-up of that last image I showed you, removing the envelope on the right as viewed from Parma Park, so it's a little bit higher, possibly more prominent, arguably more visible, and replacing it with the one on the left in the location of the as-built grading work. So we think that there's some tremendous benefits with this proposal. Again, locating the envelopes further away from the creeks, avoiding steep slopes, not impacting public views. The existing access roads are aligned with City Fire Department access and turnaround requirements. If you went to the site visit, you saw they're really well-designed roads, very well-maintained. There are existing water mains and hydrants that are sufficient to serve the proposed lot splits, with the addition of 2 new hydrants. And perk tests have been completed that have passed environmental health standards, demonstrating that the 2 proposed development envelopes could be served by septic. In addition to that, the Semlers have spent some time talking with their neighbors and sharing the proposal to make sure that this is a proposal that would be aligned with neighborhood support. Those dots there, identified in red, indicate property owners and neighbors that have supported the project. You received in your packet a letter of neighbors' support signed by those property owners and neighbors. The 2 yellow dots, of course, are the subject properties. So the goals, as staff has stated, for this Planning Commission concept review are really to address the 2 main issues here, which are the property's location within the hillside high fire hazard area. We'd like to hear comments from you on that. Again, having met with fire department and brought them to the site and reviewing plans and the existing infrastructure with them, we feel pretty confident that this is aligned with city fire department requirements for safety. Certainly far better aligned with safety concerns with respect to the creeks division and proximity to creeks. And then again, the condition that was placed back in 1992 regarding no future subdivision, we've reviewed this with legal counsel, and they've determined that, frankly, it's just not an enforceable condition of approval. And as staff has indicated in their report today and in their staff report to you, there's nothing that precludes the applicant from moving forward with this request. We're not really sure how that came about. I know Barry Semler's here. You know, if you have any questions, we're happy to help address them. It was a project at the time that could have come in with something like 27 lots, and I think that there was some serious concern about a proposal of that size. And so keeping it managed to something that was more comfortable at the time was in everybody's interest. And so, in conclusion, you can see the points here. You know, we think that the proposal would represent development envelopes that are better aligned with current city policies with respect to safety and protection, view corridor protection, certainly environmentally sensitive habitat protection, and protection of our water resources, with no significant impact on public views. And finally, we really haven't talked about this. This is a project that would also help to promote family home ownership, which is aligned with city policies for family local preference home ownership. And, you know, I hope you had a chance to read Colton Semler's letter in the package, because in addition to abating the violation case and locating envelopes in a preferred location better aligned with city policies, this is a proposal that would allow this family who grew up on this property to remain on this property. And there are future generations already on their way. I found out today, another baby's in the oven about to be born. And so this is a property that would allow the Semlers to maintain it in the family and continue to live on it with the future Semler generation. And that's valuable to our community, to be able to house our family here. If your commission agrees with staff's assessment that the project appears to be aligned with city policies required for approval, then our next step would be to submit the formal application and go through what we hope would be a streamlined process and be back before your commission for formal action on this. I don't know if you're aware, but the city application fee, this is just the deposit for the formal application, is over $20,000. So your input today has tremendous value, and we really appreciate hearing from you, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're available for questions, should you have any.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
bet.
Ms. Carmen, would you please let the applicant know how much remaining time they have?
Yes, they have 54 seconds should they need to use it.
After our questions, you're welcome to use that remaining 54 seconds if you would like. That now takes us to public comment from members of the public that would like to speak on this specific item. Do we have anyone in person or remote that would like to make comments?
Thank you, Chair Wardlow. At this time, I don't have any speaker slips for in-person public comment, though if anyone in the room would like to speak, they can approach the podium at this time. And I'm not seeing any movement. We do not have any participants online with us, and we did not receive any written correspondence for this item, so I'm going to give it back to you.
Great. We will now move on to commissioner comments or commissioner questions. Who would like to go first? Commissioner Bauke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a number of questions to staff and to the city attorney's office. And it really goes to the fundamental sort of first question about the recorded final map back in 1997 and the condition of no further subdivision. My question is, we heard from the applicant that council says it's not enforceable, and that's the first time somebody that does rural subdivisions for a living has heard that something that's on a final map can be just ignored. What is the city's process for amending or revoking that provision if it is on the map?
I think when we do the subdivision with the new map, we would amend that provision.
Okay, and the question I have is we remove that from the final map. Wouldn't it also remove that restriction from all other all of the 10 lots that were of the original subdivision, is that correct?
That's correct.
And if that's the case, would we need to, in the environmental analysis, have to analyze what the potential for additional lot splits we
Cumulative
may
impacts?
have as far as cumulative impacts?
We'd study it as part of the
Okay.
initial study.
So that was a question, because we didn't get a copy of the map or the restrictions. I want to make sure that staff has that, and they've got a copy of the CCNRs, which have recorded, and if you don't have that, the county recorder office has got that. And did you review the 2 staff reports that are referenced on July 23rd and September 10th of 1992 to
Through the
provide
ch-
us our
yeah.
staff report?
Through the chair, Commissioner Bauke, yes, we did review the staff reports for the original subdivision and, what components were important to the Planning Commission at that time, as well as staff. In terms of environmental review as well, I included some brief discussion in my staff report about the initial study that was done for that. I do want to also point out that any future subdivision, let's say that another parcel or set of parcels did want to subdivide, they would also have to go through the city's process in terms of meeting lot density requirements as well as CEQA for those different subdivisions.
Yeah, so my question is, the city attorney mentioned there would be a cumulative analysis done, and I presume that analysis would be looking at under our variable slope density size, what other parcels could be created by removing this restriction? And therefore, then we get into the whole conversation that I believe, because I have some recollection of this back in 1992. My wife actually worked for JM Consulting back then, so I have a little knowledge of sort of what was the issue, and the issue primarily was access, and it was in a high fire zone. So that issue isn't new, and actually probably since 1997, we've had a number of different fires which have elevated that, and I know the state fire marshal has gotten some provisions from legislation that deals with, reviewing subdivisions in high fire zones, and that process has been expanded, and there's criteria in that. Would the city be reviewing with the state fire marshal or at least the city's fire chief, sort of what the fire access and emergency evacuation issues is part of that analysis with this project?
Through the chair, Commissioner Bauke, we do have representatives from fire in attendance, so they can speak to that.
Good afternoon. Through the chair, Commissioner, my name is Ryan DeGiulio. I'm the fire marshal here with the City Fire Department. And the short answer to your question is yes. We would review that on a local level. There's a lot more reviews for the fire department once actual structures are proposed or the development of said lots go through the whole process. We will look at all the current standards by the State Fire Marshal's Office to ensure they're in line with those standards.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure that would be the case. So I think that's the only questions I have on this project.
Thank you, Commissioner Bauke. We'll now hear from Commissioner Wiscombe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for your presentations. Appreciated. I'll start with Ms. Plummer. Building envelope. Can you give me a definition of exactly what that means?
Through the chair, Commissioner Wiscombe, so the development envelopes just essentially say you can develop in this particular area. The original subdivision, the original 10-lot subdivision, had development envelopes that were specified for residential purposes, which would allow for something like a home and garage and that sort of structure. And then additionally for Lot 9, it specifically had accessory development envelopes. So it would be something like a barn or some other accessory purpose, but not a residential structure for where you would inhabit. So.
Okay, thank you for that. And then on the the diagram we received on the site visit, which is very helpful. On Lot B, Ms. Plummer, the 10,651 square foot envelope down at the bottom there, that is, you want to put that diagram up so people understand what I'm talking about? Thank you. Yeah, that's great, okay. So the one down at the bottom is on this particular drawing, is an accessory unit, is that correct? Accessory building envelope? The primary ones are in red, right?
That's correct. So you
And
can see
how-
my mouse here. So this
Yeah.
here is an accessory envelope. This is an accessory envelope, accessory envelope, and accessory envelope.
Right, and how far is that accessory envelope from the creek, from the top of the bank?
This one here, so I do want to say this was outlined in the PRT, so the pre-application review from Creeks Division. We did want information about we were more concerned about the proposed envelopes as far as their distance from the Sycamore Creek top of bank, which needs to be 50 feet. This one, I believe it has a distance of about 72 feet, if I'm reading that correctly. But we would still, so this envelope here that I'm pointing, that's recorded and proposed to remain in that particular location. If they did want to develop in the future, though, with some other type of accessory structure, like I said, maybe a barn, something like that, or some type of shed, it would still have to go through the city's process and be reviewed by Creeks. So we would be looking at what is your distance from the top of bank with that specific building if they did want to develop it.
Okay, great. So Creeks has reviewed this, preliminarily reviewed this before it's being seen here at this concept hearing, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great, okay. So then with the formal application, if we go that route, what sort of technical studies are going to be, there was some reference to technical studies related to geological hazards and biological resources. Are those the studies that you're going to require, or?
So through the chair, Commissioner Wiscombe, I think one, we would do a more in-depth review of the initial study that was originally part of the 10-lot subdivision. In the PRT review, staff had indicated that we would want more information for biological resources because this does have proximity to Sycamore Creek as well as Oak Woodland areas, and we want to avoid any potential impacts to those resources. So that would definitely be one. As well as geological because of the slope areas as well for proposed future development. Yeah.
Okay, great, okay. And then, okay, we covered that. So just a question that kind of follows up on what Commissioner Valke is saying. So if we were to be in favor of bringing this back for a formal application, this is for Ms. Ostranger, could we also add a condition that there's no further subdivisions? Can we add that back in by after approving this if we were to go that route?
Commissioner Wiscombe, through the chair, I've actually just been sitting here contemplating if there's a creative condition that we could put on the map, so I don't have an answer for you right now.
Okay, okay. But that's a possibility that we could. I mean, if they did it in 92, why couldn't we do it in 2025?
Well, unintended consequences of what my creativity would bring for future generations.
Yeah,
But-
okay.
So I
okay.
need to look at it further.
Well, then they could go through the same process again, I guess, if they wanted more. Okay, I think, oh, and then I just have one question. I was confused on the policies, Ms. Plummer, that you, this is on page 25 of 57. Yeah, under the housing element, these are applicable general plan policies. Why do we have goal 2 in there? Prioritize affordable housing.
Apologies, let me just pull that up.
It's page 25.
Yeah. Okay, and you're looking at, okay, so goal two, that's a goal within the housing element.
Right.
Specifically, but what I was really trying to get at was more this policy within that section of the
2.7.
housing element, 2.7,
2.7,
which talks
okay.
about local preference for housing. So that's why it's included.
Okay.
It's not, yeah, I can see the confusion potentially with that, but it's really about 2.7.
Okay, great. And then right above it, policy 1.2, it says encourage development of housing on infill sites near transit and jobs, particularly redevelopment of sites suitable for housing, while continuing to limit residential density in high fire hazard areas. So that kind of, that's doesn't support your recommendation, is that right?
Through the chair, Commissioner Wiscombe, yeah, I'd say that in general, we do look at, whether residential density is appropriate in certain high fire hazard areas. We can't, specifically preclude development if it's in a
Right.
single-family residential zone.
Yeah.
But, I'd say it's put in there for the Planning Commission to consider. With this particular project, as I mentioned, it's meeting the lot area density, which is the most strict density given the slope, since the averages are 30%. So while it says to limit residential density, I mean, I think it sort of ties back into the land use element as well, where we're trying to prioritize low-density, single-family residential character. So I think that there's still a way you can get to that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I was just a little bit confused by that, but, okay, I see Ms.
Ms.
Arciniega
Arciniega.
over there nodding.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just wanted to acknowledge that there are at times proposals that have competing policies or contradicting policies, and it's the role of the Planning Commission to balance those policies and to see, that's what we look to you for. If in the balance, what is the preference and the goal of the community and the commission?
Thank you, okay, great. And then just one final question. I think this, there were some fire requirements cited here that fire retardant plantings around structures, 100-foot clearance of native landscape around structure, and interior sprinklers. So those are the three kind of conditions that you would put on any sort of development if the lot splits were done. Is that correct? And thank you for your service, by the way. We really appreciate it.
Of course, our pleasure. Commissioner, through the chair, that is correct. Each project that is applied for in the city goes through a plan review process through the fire department, just as it does with all the other departments within the city. So depending on what project is being, proposed, will require certain requirements from the fire department. In this case, the one that we've talked about the most today is access and water requirements, first and foremost, before we even start talking about a proposed structure.
Right.
So once we start talking about proposed structure, it really is driven by what part of the city this proposed structure is going to take place. And here in the extreme foothill zone, then those other requirements that you mentioned would kick in. Fire resistant vegetation, defensible space requirements, interior fire sprinklers. Those are, and the building department looks into fire resistant construction. So those are the type of things from the state fire marshal's office that we implement into our plan review for each project.
Okay. And then is there a maintenance agreement for the private road now, or I gather that's something that you would require, would be a maintenance agreement for the private road if it doesn't exist?
Through the chair, Commissioner Wiscombe, so with that public waiver that I mentioned would be something that would be required for this project to have more than 2 lots served by a private road, they do need to have an agreement. My understanding is they already have that agreement in place because they had that waiver approved originally, but that would need to be amended to include this particular project.
Okay, and then would fire department have a chance to review that maintenance agreement and make sure it's satisfactory to continue to be able to get their vehicles and their equipment up that private road?
Yeah, Commissioner, that's correct. We work in tandem with the Transportation Division a lot.
Okay.
When it comes to our access and our requirements. And during defensible space or defensible space evaluations, we can go and check to see how the maintenance of that is going to ensure that there's proper fire department access there.
Great, okay, thank you. Thank you for that answer. That concludes my questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Wiscombe. We'll now hear from Commissioner DeLuccio.
Thank you. Thank you for an excellent staff report. I think the applicant did an excellent letter also. I just want to acknowledge that too. Just to piggyback, is there periodic checks on the road condition and that everything's safe fire-wise?
Commissioner, through the chair, we don't have the staff to do that for every single private road within the city. There are periodic spot checks that happen. So during the springtime, a lot of our activity in the Fire Prevention Division is up in the wildland section of our city. So could we go by and check on that property? Sure, we could. Do we have it scheduled? We don't.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple of questions. So this will, if we give directions, it'll come back to us as a formal application. And if we adopt something, do we adopt a new resolution? And what happens to the prior resolution? Does that get folded into a new resolution?
Through the chair, Commissioner DeLuccio, so that resolution is still in effect, regardless of this subdivision, because it has to tie in with the other lots of that original subdivision project. We would do a new resolution for this particular project, but it would probably include some type of notation that conditions under the original subdivision still apply.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Or if something's removed from the
Or
original?
if something's removed, we would
That would be
indicate
noted
that.
in the new one. And when they do file if we go that far to get a formal application filed, I notice has the design review is one of the components. Would it be, before it comes to us, would they have to go to them for a subdivision grading plans approval?
Through the chair, Commissioner DeLuccio, so before it would come to you for any type of action, they would need to go to design review and get feedback from the single-family design board on all the as-built grading work that's required, yes.
Okay. Can I look at the map one more time, this big map, or is it, can you put this up, or is it up already? Does somebody have this? Is that it? Because I just want to understand it a little bit better. I understand we're exchanging two envelopes. I get that, and I think the new envelopes would be set further back from the foot of the bank against where the creek is. But are there, how many accessory buildings are on the site right now? I know there's a main building which is on there, and is that how big is that? The main building, is it how many? Is that 45,000? What is the 45,351 feet? It's on lot number A.
Yeah, Lot A,
Yeah.
my records were that lot 9 technically, so this whole parcel right now,
Right,
which is
and it's
proposed Lot A.
become Lot A, yeah.
Yeah, so it has a house, I believe the square footage is around 8,000 square feet,
Mm-hmm.
plus there's a 1,173 square foot garage, a pool, and then this is that pool cabana, so that's the pool and pool cabana here. So those are all the structures currently.
So those are not, this 43 is not footage then, is it? What is, it says 43,351. I don't know what that is, but it's obviously not that big, the house.
Oh, it's the size of the development envelope to be removed, yeah.
Okay, and then below it is there is another accessory building that's a 10,651, I'll just call it a 6% slope. That's an accessory building, correct, right now? Maybe the applicant can
Yeah,
help me understand the existing
Through
buildings on
the
the site.
yeah,
Actually, I was wrong. 43 is this.
yeah.
It's kind
Okay,
of a-
so through the chair, Commissioner DeLuccio, these are not developed. There aren't structures there. If you'll recall from the site visit, there isn't a structure built here, or here, or here. The only structures right now are the primary residence, the pool cabana, and the pool area there.
Okay, because my thing
And-
says building envelope to remain.
Yes,
So
there
that's what I'm
are
confused.
there are 2 building envelopes to remain. So the one with the main house on 1000 West Mountain Drive, that is proposed to remain. That's outlined in blue. This envelope here, outlined in blue, would also be remaining, but would now be on Lot B.
Right.
And then this envelope as well is proposed to remain. So Lot B would have the new residential envelope that's hashed out in red here, as well as these 2, but this one would be going away.
So there'll be other existing envelopes besides
There-
the 2
yeah.
new envelopes that we're exchanging to. There's on Lot C, there is an envelope there.
Yes.
But it's not developed with anything.
That's correct.
And then on Lot B, there's another envelope which is not developed right now. So I just want to understand that, but it
Yeah.
does say that it's the building envelope to remain, means it can be developed.
That's correct, Commissioner DeLucio. So, in theory, this one allows for a future residence. The owner of Lot B could opt to put a shed structure here or some other type of accessory structure here. As I already mentioned, they would still need to go through the city's process to review distance from any creek areas and to meet any other required standards from building and safety, et cetera. So,
Would the process
yeah.
be more at that point to design review subcommittee that would go?
So through the
Before.
chair, Commissioner DeLucio, yes, it would be design review most likely, unless there was some other entitlement that they needed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now I understand this better. And those are my questions right now.
Thank you, Commissioner DeLucio. We'll hear from Commissioner Barnwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to go back to the road maintenance. I have a lot of familiarity with these foothill properties where there are several different properties that were subdivided by families, and they have a road maintenance agreement that has no teeth in it. And by teeth, I mean the road maintenance agreement does not model itself, for example, after a homeowners association where there are set-asides in money, and then the homeowners association itself reviews these roads. Is that something that we could add? Because I'm again, because of my background, the phrase road maintenance or road maintenance agreement isn't as specific as I think this fire hazard area deserves, which is somebody annually needs to look at that. And as these properties are sold to other people, that maybe not this family, eventually, how do we guarantee that? Is there a way that we can do that?
Through the chair, just for one moment, Commissioner Barnwell, the applicant and owner are here and they can speak to the existing agreement if they would like.
Mr. Semler, would you like to come up?
Yes, thank you. My name is Barry Semler. I've owned the property since the early 1980s. And when we did the subdivision, we basically did a road maintenance agreement between the primary roads as well as the agricultural roads. We planted it with at one point we had 12,500 avocado trees. We don't have those any longer. But the T-fire contributed to our loss of those. But in any event, I've been continuing to maintain the roads. They were dirt roads at one point in time. We paved them. They were paved with the majority of the roads were paved with 4 inches of base and 3 inches of asphalt, except for the areas where there was going to be fire department access. And those roads are 6 inches of base and 4 inches of asphalt. Yeah, so they have a 10-inch section. And we have, in the road maintenance agreement, we have to slurry them every 5 years. And but, you know, I'm not going to be here forever, so we do need to basically review that with reference to future generations, taking care and maintaining the roads to a certain standard. I'm happy to have the fire department. They have been out. We used to have burn permits several years ago before they discontinued those within the city. So the fire department would come out every time we would burn and with their vehicles. and with fire, obviously with burn permit issued by the fire marshals. But they don't come out anymore on a regular basis, and they're certainly welcome to. And we can set up a schedule if you, in fact, would like to do so. I think that would be appropriate, and we would be happy to accommodate them in any way possible.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We're very fire sensitive, so for our own property, but at the same time, we want to maintain and ensure that there is access to all of the properties.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One other question. I'm driving toward the direction of whose nickel is it that pays for it? Because the problems in my experience have been that wrestling that to the ground, you find one lot owner says, well, I don't have any money, I can't contribute, because it has not been thought through as to how that money gets set aside and that kind of thing.
Very good point. And we do have one of those property owners who hasn't paid his road maintenance
There we go.
fees or
There we
agricultural
go.
fees in 20 years. So we file a lien against it and a lien against his property. We try to perfect it within the 5-year period to turn it into a judgment, but it still doesn't ensure the fact that he's going to maintain it. The amounts of money that are required were established by project engineer for both the agricultural roads as well as the primary roads, which are the paved roads. And so we have an amount, we usually build in a certain amount that is reserved. Each road, both ag as well as primary, has its own bank account, separate bank account. And we maintain them, and as I said, I've been maintaining them for a long since the commencement of these roads and when we built the original subdivision. But I think it's important that we basically establish a separate entity or third-party relationship to where they're maintained and based upon the income received. Everybody else has seemed to pay their dues, except you're right, there's always somebody that doesn't.
Thank you for that answer. I will be asking that question again, and I appreciate the direction that you're going. I think that's an important thing to make sure that we get where we want. Thank you. Thank you, staff. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Barnwell. Do we have any other questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you to my fellow commissioners for all of their questions. I do not have any other further questions. We're not in public comment at this point. My apologies.
I don't have a comment, I just have a quick question. I'd like to know where parcel 10 is on that map, in case it's me.
Oh.
And I'm affected by this.
We're happy to talk with you after the hearing to address any questions, yeah. Commissioner Wiscombe. We'll move on to deliberations
Are you
now.
ready for?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I'll just go through my notes on this. So I'm going to say that the project appears to be physically suitable for development. I think that the building envelopes have been, where they're too close to the creek, have been moved away, or the top of the bank of the creek have been moved away. So I would support the project coming back for a subdivision. There are technical studies that need to be done, the geological hazards, the biological resources, and as Ms. Plummer mentioned, the in-depth review of the initial study. I think those are important. And also, to move on the no additional subdivision, which was on the 92 resolution, that should be explored by City Attorney's Office to see if we could potentially add that again. A requirement for the 2 additional dedicated fire hydrants and the private water main supply to the hydrant, that needs to be, I think, illustrated before this comes back. And compliance with sufficient parking, open yard, setbacks and building height, was all in the staff report. And then we go on to the agreement of maintenance of the private road. I think the fire department needs to review that. I'm happy with the 6 inches of base and 4 inches of asphalt. I don't know if that's the whole road, but I know where you have turnarounds for large equipment, that needs to be done, and that's pretty typical for the heavier vehicles. But I think that a formal agreement is essential, and the financing for the formal agreement has to be in place, and the fire department needs to review it and make sure that they're happy with it and that they are able, in the time of any emergency, to be able to get their vehicles up there and in a timely manner. So, and then there's the fire requirement for the fire retardant plantings, the 100-foot clearance. This is all related, I guess, to when you develop the property, but all the things that the fire department requires when the building envelopes actually get developed. And I think that's and I guess creeks, I think, again, just the final look by creeks to make sure, particularly on that one, Ms. Plummer, that I talked about down on, whatever it is, Lot B, the accessory building envelope there. Just make sure, I can't read that, well, I didn't see that on, it's not on my, you said it was 72 feet. If that's what it is, that's fine. And I think that's really all. Yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wiscombe. Vice Chair Boss.
Thank you, Chair. I'll agree with Commissioner Wiscombe's comments and a couple of comments for staff. Just thank you for the creek overlay. That was really helpful to see up on the large screen. And then Commissioner Wiscombe noted this in the question period, but the housing element policies, I don't think any of the 4 that are listed apply. So goal 1 is housing that meets community needs. Policy 1.2 was development of housing on infill sites near transit and jobs. Goal 2 was prioritize affordable housing. That's the one that was specifically mentioned. And then policy 2.7 is the local preference that prioritizes affordable housing for lower income households. So none of those apply to this project. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Vice Chair Boss. We'll now hear from Commissioner Bauke.
Madam Chair, I think it's very important for this project. We have a cumulative analysis for the impacts of removing the no further subdivision, which will apply to all 10 lots out there. And that analysis specifically focus on the policies that are set forth in the staff report on page 30 and 31, which are under the safety element that has to do with both evacuation routes, it involves fire hazard programs, and also the steep slopes. That analysis looks at the potential for neighbors, because there are some neighbors that do have the potential for further subdivision if we use the city's slope density requirement provisions, and that needs to all be looked at, because I'm concerned that we're potentially, in fact, without that analysis, I can't make that without that any findings on this, violating the whole concept of putting more people at risk in a high fire zone. So we need that data for that analysis if they go forward. Thank you.
Commissioner DeLuccio.
Yeah, I can support everything I've heard here, going forward. I think it's very well thought out. I think you've done a lot of work on it. I just want to acknowledge that. And also, by exchanging the envelopes, you've significantly reduced the sloping below the 30%. And the only thing is, I would like to see, when it comes back, I want to know exactly for the new parcels, the new envelopes, what is the footage away from the creek exactly, the top of the bank? What is that footage? And are we, am I hearing that we're going to do we're given direction to do an analysis about removing the condition about having additional lot envelopes?
I
Boss-
think, I think as council said, it's basically to go forward, they have to remove that. And to remove it involves the entire map, not just their parcel, but all the parcels that are on that map. And then because of that, we have this theoretical situation on these other parcels, and they have to look at the whole, because it does have the impact of doing that.
Okay, I understand. I'm sure staff will work with the applicant on that and with the city attorney. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner DeLucio and Commissioner Bauke. Any other comments? Commissioner Peterson?
Yeah, I think I echo what's been said here. I have been enlightened by my fellow commissioners' comments. I wish we could have the legal clarity on whether we can put conditions onto this if the conditions are being removed before we make a recommendation, either way, go forward or not go forward. Does that make sense? That's my only concern.
Commissioner Peterson, through the chair, I couldn't give you that certainty right here, right now.
No. But I understand that we're going to be working towards that.
Yes.
And so I appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. Thank you for Ms. Plummer for this detailed staff report. I thought it was really helpful. And thank you to the applicant team and for having us up for the site visit. We appreciated getting to see everything in real time. I am supportive of this and the work that the applicant team has done, both for this project and over the many years of the investment that you've done into the Mountain Drive area. I agree with my fellow commissioners in a lot of the comments that, per usual, Commissioner Wiscombe made, as well as Commissioner Boss, for our record points, as well as everyone and our concerns regarding just how, if we remove this condition, how that will impact other properties. I think that for the purposes of this hearing, though, I would assume that we can provide the general consensus, and then you guys will kind of have those conversations before this comes back. Okay. Well, that works for me if that's conducive for everybody else. All right. I know that we had two folks taking notes on collective comments. No, we don't need to do a motion. So would you like us to recap that for staff, or?
Through the chair, or chair, force of habit. Yeah, I actually have a list of your comments. I'll defer to Ms. Arsenica. We were initially asking for vote regarding the two comments, but it sounds like we have a consensus that they're okay to move forward with the comments that you've provided, so that's sufficient for at least me.
Great. We were prepared to summarize them for you, but if you feel confident in what you have, then that works as well.
Yeah. I think, Chair Wardlow, if you don't mind summarizing.
Great. Vice Chair Boss will provide a summary.
A few notes here that the site and project is physically suitable for the development. Technical studies need to be done, and more specifically, geological hazards and biological resources. Should explore and fully analyze changes to the conditions of approval, and if any additional subdivisions that should be further explored. A requirement for 2 additional fire hydrants and private water supply, sufficient parking, open yard, fire to review and the applicant to formalize and finance an agreement of maintenance of the private road, fire retardant planning, removing housing policies from the analysis as they do not apply, a note that there's reduced sloping by removing and replacing the envelopes, but there was a question about the distance from the creek. And I had a note about creeks map, ask Commissioner Wiscombe.
Thank you. Good summary. And I think the only other thing that I would add is Commissioner Bauke's comment, which I think is very important, about the safety element in our general plan and looking at those policies and making sure that you are compliant with those. Thank you.
Thank you to all of the fellow commissioners and to staff and to the applicant team. With that, we will conclude this item and move on to item 4, discussion item on alcohol retail sales annual report.
Thank you all.
All right, we are now on to item 4, a discussion regarding the alcohol retail sales annual inspection report. We have Annalisa Hoods, Public Service Coordinator, to provide an overview of the annual report. Ms. Hoods, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Actually, Commander Miller is going to be providing the bulk of the
All right.
information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Wardlow and Commissioners. We're here to provide our annual report for our alcohol retail establishment inspection program. It is the first time we're giving it, and that's the reason we came to provide a brief presentation. We felt it was important that even though the information within the annual report is very basic and as far as what we've done with the establishments through the ordinance, that it would be helpful for us to come in today and kind of give a brief overview of our program and what we've implemented so far since the establishment of the ordinance. So the things we plan to talk about today is which businesses are regulated by the ordinance, just clarify exactly which places we're going to when we're doing our inspections, and who falls under the ordinance for our program. We're also going to talk about, I know everybody is familiar with the ordinance, but just some very key points of the ordinance, and then into our responsibility at the police department. And so at the police department, you'll have to forgive me if I interchange the alcohol ordinance and deemed approved, because at the police department, we call it our deemed approved program. So I might interchange those two. But our deemed approved program falls within our investigative division. I'm the commander for that division, and Ms. Hoods is the police coordinator, and she's the one that coordinates the program, does the inspections. And so I'll go over the responsibilities for what we do, and then she will provide, when she's doing the inspections, what that process is and what business performance standards she's looking at when she goes in and makes sure that everybody's following the rules that they're supposed to. And then Mr. Doimus is here with us with the city's attorney office, and he's going to talk about the variations that could be made for the standards that we're looking at under the ordinance. And just to tie it all together, it seems like, just to be clear, because even us working with it, there's a little bit of what does ABC do versus what the ordinance does, just a real quick brief explanation on what the differences are. So I won't go into a lot of the history, only because I'm sure everybody here knows a lot more about it than I do. But traditionally, obviously, the alcohol beverage retail sales was all under the jurisdiction of ABC. But what cities started to do as early as the 90s, I guess, was implement ordinances to kind of combat the secondary nuisance problems that come from alcohol sales through land use permits. And so with the city council here in Santa Barbara directed city staff to look at and implement an ordinance in 2017, which was effective in November 5th of 2021. Its purpose was to prevent and abate those secondary nuisance-related activities and give more of a local oversight to our specific problems here in Santa Barbara. Obviously, with implementing policy, procedure, staffing, our program at the police department didn't start until October of 2023, and so that's why our annual report here today is kind of 2023/2024. So the important distinction for our local ordinance here is it regulates off-sale alcohol licenses. The jurisdiction of ABC is all alcohol sales, so I'll get into that later, but that's the big distinction there. So when we talk about businesses that this ordinance regulate, it's off-sale, so it's the retail establishments that sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits that are going to be consumed off-site. So it doesn't include places like bars and restaurants and even wineries that sometimes will sell it to go, but they have it on site. So the off-sale, the examples of off-sale type locations that we have here in the city are liquor stores, supermarkets, grocery stores, gas stations, neighborhood markets, retail establishments, and currently we have 96 within the city. There are a few that are in the process that are pending. Some of the key points of the ordinance, obviously, as mentioned, the purpose behind it is that so that there's a healthy and safe business environment for places that sell alcohol. Our goal is to prevent these secondary nuisance-related problems, noise complaints, public intoxication, fights, assaults, vandalisms, property damage, DUI, graffiti, these things that all result from alcohol use and we deal with at the police department on a daily basis. The ordinance also implements other standards that move towards that goal. Some of them are police department related, some of them are planning department related. The location and distance standards. The big one highlighted, obviously, is one that's been a topic of discussion is the limitation on the container sizes. One of the ones that we deal with is, that we find helpful is the ordinance does have training requirements for employees that are at these establishments that are selling the alcohol, product display requirements, and then again, some of the ones that are more planning, drive-throughs, payphones, signage, window obstructions. These are things that are key points to the ordinance that we look at when we're doing our inspections or in the front end when we're working with planning on when they're established. When we talk about why the size limits matter, I guess the perspective we have at the police department is our experience is, and there's been then studies that have shown that if they're cheaper, they're more accessible, and it leads more to those problems. So rather than having the conversation about having somebody buy more, it's more the access. And the smaller the quantity, the easier access, the cheaper it is, the more likely it is that it's just going to be tossed to the side, and there's going to be the nuisance things that we're talking about with the litter and the trash and the loitering. So the way the process works for us at the police department is planning will let us know that there's somebody who's applied for a new conditional use permit. The first thing we do is we review the location and the crime statistics for that location. We like to say that we're going to look at the last 2 years, but in the effort of being thorough, we usually look at more than that just to have a really firm grasp of what's going on in that area. We use those findings on what the activity and the crime rate, whether it's average, high, low, combined with a lot of times in Santa Barbara, since we do have 96 of them, there's usually a concentration discussion. Do we have too many in that area? And we use that information, not only do we relay it to planning, but we also use that to complete, if the applicant has requested a PCN or a public convenience necessity letter. And what that is it's it's a determination. The reason I pause is it's a little confusing because it sounds like contradictory for the police department to say that it provides a benefit to the city. We promote small businesses in the city and want those businesses here, so it seems counterintuitive to say that there's no necessity for it. We have so many of them, it's almost like, well, we don't need more because we have so many. But if there is a business that's wanting to start up and there's not a problem with a high crime rate in that area or a pattern of these problems, we will determine that and provide that PCN letter. I think that some of the confusion is that PCN letter is just kind of the first step in the whole process. It's not us as the police department saying we're totally good with everything this applicant wants and the business plan, because at that point we don't know that. All we're looking at is the crime stats for that area, and whether we think that that's going to already has a problem or the establishment of a new retail alcohol sale business there would cause a major problem for us. As far as our responsibility, once it's been established and in business, regardless of whether it's a new CUP, new business that falls under the ordinance, or it's an existing establishment, on an annual basis, we'll invoice for the deemed approved fee, and we'll do an inspection of that establishment. If I say deemed approved, if it's a deemed approved one, a grandfathered one, and they don't have some of the same stipulations, but they still are inspected to make sure they're in compliance with their ABC conditions, and also don't have any of the conditions that we would qualify as a nuisance, which could possibly make them have to fall under the CUP. If there are any violations observed during those inspections, we give them a correction notice, and we follow up with them to make sure that it's been corrected. Another responsibility that we have that Ms. Hoods follows up on is if we have any regular calls for service or complaints for a specific location, we'll follow up. Any public complaints, we'll follow up with the businesses, even if it's not time for that inspection. And so I mentioned that the information in the annual report is kind of basic. I mentioned we have 96 in the city. We've inspected all of them. During those inspections in 2023 and 2024, we noted 20 violations that required corrections. Now, these corrections could be as simple as, hey, that signage is blocking the window and it's fixed right then and there, or it's something that's more placement related that they're going to have to change before we come back and check on it. Of those 20 violations, we still only have one pending outstanding violation, which is one of the ones I was talking about as far as placement of within the business of where the alcohol is. We invoiced all 96 of them for the deemed approved fee, and we have 93 that we received payments from. And so I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Hoods here, but this is a list of the business performance standards that we're looking at, both on the police department side when she's doing her inspections and when working together with the planning department and what they're looking at the front end of it when we receive the CUP.
Okay, thank you. So every business that I respond to on a yearly basis, everybody currently has the same standards that we're looking at. Some of those things are the basic ones are product display. When we walk into an establishment, they aren't permitted to have alcohol within 5 feet of the entrance. So if that's the case, I will either try and give them feedback, and perhaps we can work it out right then and there, and they don't get a correction notice. If it's something maybe bigger that requires more movement, I'll issue them a correction notice and then come back and check on that. A big issue that when I started doing this last year, ran across was the little shots of the alcohol on just about every single counter. So that's one thing we mandate, is that those can no alcohol on the counter. So they have to have them behind the counter. So that was a big one. That was pretty much the majority of the violations last year, and everybody corrected that except for the one. I request that every establishment, someone, either the owner, the manager, completes the ABC lead training, which is overview of alcohol sales. So that way they can then, it provides consistency throughout every business, so everybody's checking IDs, looking for signs of intoxication. So we at least know there is a standard that everybody's sort of following, and then they can train their employees, or some businesses opt to have all of their employees also take the class. It's an online course through ABC. I do check for litter, make sure there aren't bottles. You know, a few establishments have a gazillion cigarette butts, and so I've dealt with a lot of that. And then also, as Commander Miller mentioned, complaint-driven. You know, I've gone back to several places because people will call and say there's litter. And often, we recently had somebody reach out to us regarding selling to minors. So that is something that I'll refer to ABC as well, and they follow up on that. And then the container size limitations, that is not, currently, we only have one business currently right now that, or actually two. Everybody started off, I like to say, on an even playing field because everybody was deemed approved. They were all existing businesses. But gradually, as these businesses, new CUPs are issued and businesses start opening is when we kind of implement the higher level of inspections where we're now require size limitations. And I don't know if you're familiar with the size limitations. I'm happy to read that if you'd like. So the product sale limitations for new alcohol retail establishments include wine in less than 750 milliliter containers. Airline bottles are not permitted, and they must be in a container with a volume of 375 milliliters or greater in size. So we're now getting away from the smaller bottles. And beer, ale, or malt liquor in containers greater than 32 ounces are permitted, except containers of 2 gallons or more, which are intended to dispense in multiple servings. And then we also do the multi-quantity packaging to get away from the single sales. So they have to be in packages of 3 or more, multi-quantity packaged.
The next slide.
I don't.
Oh.
Yeah.
Afternoon, Commission. Being an attorney in the police department, worrying that I would talk a lot, they only gave me one slide to do, but I am going to get my money's worth with this one slide, so bear with me for a second. So when we look at the variation, just to give a little further background, the state preempts us on a lot when it comes to alcohol. We can't regulate sales, we can't regulate distribution, but we can have control through our land use, right? And we do it through the CUP and placing conditions of approval. And the purpose of these ordinances is to design and protect the community, and we do that through the locations of where they can be, figuring out if there's higher concentrations of outlets, and also the retail practices of outlets, especially when they're new, not grandfathered in. And again, all this is designed to protect the community at large. The two main purposes of this ordinance, in terms of the teeth of this ordinance, is for new outlets who aren't grandfathered in, they have to adhere to these new requirements to reduce these nuisances, right? Because the goal, as Ms. Hood said, is that over time, and time being a key, that everyone will be at the even playing field of having all these new requirements put in through the ordinance. The second enforcement mechanism that gives us control of this ordinance is the ability to revoke the CUP, whether you're grandfathered in or not, and that allows us to, take the use. Now, we don't rush that level right away. We do it through notices of violation, warnings, citations, hearings in front of the Planning Commission where there could be suspensions of the CUP. But eventually, if someone just does not comply, the Commission does have the authority to revoke such a CUP. So that's really important in terms of provision of having control of places that are creating and causing a lot of nuisances. When we brought forth this, a couple commissioners were here when we did this, when we brought forth this ordinance to Planning Commission, one of the goals the Commission wanted to do was create a provision on hardship for development requirements, right? And so the goal of that was to at least consider, like, if to do something minor from the development costs would cost such a proportionality in terms of way more money, it wouldn't be fair. So to give at least a consideration of that hardship. But there wasn't a consideration for the retail practices. And the reason that is, as if you go back to those hearings, a lot of public comment was there. A lot of public comment from youth in the community, a lot of public comment from the community. And the community and the city council, when creating this ordinance, decided that the conditions on these, like we see up there in terms of size limitations, noise, they should be treated as standards. And those standards should not be waived. Those are community standards of how we should be practicing and these retail outlets should be practicing. And as I mentioned, over the years, all these retail outlets will be having these standards. And deviating from those standards, besides going out from the standard that's created by the community, it creates inequity. It also makes enforcement more confusing over the years because which standards which outlet has which standards. And so, I did hear in one previous hearing the concern, and it's a recognized concern, of, larger outlets versus small, and there's an advantage over that. I mean, no, in the sense that even large outlets can have change in ownerships, corporations, if they change the square footage. And the one common factor here is just time. Over time, over the years, and for the betterment of the community, all these standards will apply down the road. And so that's kind of the hardship there. So the hardship for the commission when they're going through these things and looking at the process, and staff does a great job, community development staff does a great job in looking at that, is there hardships in the development standards? But when it comes to operating, to reduce the nuisance, we shouldn't have hardships when we're considering standards that are designed to reduce nuisances in the community. I think that's the most important distinction, and I'll turn it back to staff. Thank you.
Just in conclusion. There we go. Just in conclusion, the difference is that there's a reason that they seem a little confusing, and that's because we modeled a lot of our standards off of ABC conditions. What we were trying to do is make them the same across the board. The ABC conditions that they apply are for both on and off sale, and they set their own conditions for each individual business. So if they see something with one business, they can choose these conditions. And if they see something with someone within the same city, but they give them different conditions, then that leads to some of the confusion that Mr. Duemis is talking about. They conduct their own enforcement. So they come in with their teams and they do their own enforcement. So the big difference for us here with the ordinance is that obviously the biggest difference is that it's just the off-sale. So it's only one side of the alcohol retail establishments. But what we're trying to do with the ordinance is make it even for everybody across the board. And the reason that sometimes they look the same is we are, as an agency, contacted by ABC and asked for to give our input for their conditions. And what we've done at our agency is we've recommended the same conditions because we want it to match our ordinance here. And so that's why sometimes it's like, was it an ABC or is it an ordinance? We're trying to make them the same so that everybody has the same conditions. So that a little muddy, but that's the big difference and why they seem the same. So with that concludes our presentation. We're open for any questions or comments.
Great. Thank you all very much for coming and kind of walking us through all of that. At this point, we'll go to public comment. Ms. Carmen, do we have anyone in remote or?
Thank you, Chair
Like to make
Wardlow. At
comments?
this time, I don't have any speaker slips for in-person public comment. We do not have any participants online with us, and we did not receive any written correspondence for this item, so I'm going to give it back to you.
All right, great. We will now go to commissioner questions, and first we have Commissioner Barnwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm not clear on a couple things. So we, as the city, issue the off-sale, permission to have off-sale alcohol sales. Is that correct? ABC doesn't do that, but we do that. We've occupied that former thing that ABC used to do. We now do that, correct? Off-sale.
Correct, but they still have to get their license through ABC.
Yes, okay. And in that off-sale offering, was that the conversation under which you were talking about the PCNs? And we do say yes to a new applicant because of what we consider to be the public convenience and nuisance issue. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So my comment is just this, as a wordsmith. It's odd that the police department is making a determination for convenience and necessity associated with selling alcohol. It doesn't seem like the sale of alcohol it would be categorized as some kind of a convenience, and I'm only suggesting that that name is odd. It seems like, appropriate retail sales service level, and you make a finding in that regard. But so that's what threw me off when you were saying that. I thought, oh my God, so the police are like making a finding of convenience and necessity, which seems like an odd role for you guys to make that but it's just the name that makes it sound that way.
If I may too, and I understand, Chair Wardlow, Commissioner Barber, that's true. That's just the universal name that ABC uses, so that's how other agencies use it. So that's just the universal, statewide term. So that's what they're used to.
So
it does sound like a like out of a George Orwell novel, like Double Talk.
Yeah,
but
it's an odd,
but it's
for
not-
police
but
to be doing that.
It's not
is
meant
very
to be
odd.
that way, so.
Okay, but that was my confusion at first, and thank you for explaining it, and also thank you for what you're doing, and it was a great report. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Barnwell. Commissioner Bauke?
And thank you, Madam Chair. Well, first off, thank you for your staff report. It's very thorough. One of the concerns I've had, because we've seen a number of these come before us at this point in time, is just the amount of cost to the applicants, and I want to make sure from the staff, is there a distinction between these applications for conditional use permits and other conditional use permits? Is there a minor versus major, or are they paying the same application fee? That's question number one. Number two, could we consider an amendment to the process such that we start processing these on some kind of consent calendar approval basis? Because sometimes they're like the one and only, or an item that, it's like a few minutes is all we really need, and sort of, have the opportunity to pull it if it's a concern versus bogging down your agenda. So that's just a procedural one. So any comments you have on that would be appreciated.
To Chair Wardlow, just to give an admonition to the commissioners, we can't talk about necessarily, I don't want to go too far into talking about changing the ordinance because that wasn't what we put on the agenda. But that question seems relevant to the CUP question, so.
If you can give me a moment, I'm going to look at fees. As far as the process on consent, absolutely, that's procedural. I think that we could, at your recommendation, just bring these items or put them on the consent agenda, and you guys can move on those. If there's no discussion warranted, it would seem if a variation of standard is requested, that would require discussion by your commission, though. So, and the four that we've seen have all had a variation requested. The consistent one is the location standard, which requires 500 feet from a number of land uses, and inevitably, they're all within that. So that standard seems to be regularly triggered. So I would just wanted to note that. We did look at the cost of fees, and whether or not in our annual fee update, whether we should have a fee specific to this type of CUP, because it seems fairly procedural. But in estimating the cost, or the time and hours that staff put into the staff report and review in coordination with PD and all those things, the hours still equated to our minor CUP fee, which is a slightly lower fee. But we decided not to do a distinct fee beyond that.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Wiscombe? Thank you, Bauke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. I was here on the commission when we did the ordinance, and I was always interested in the larger containers versus the smaller ones, but it makes perfect sense to me. So do you report violations, Ms. Hood, to the ABC, and no, not at all? Okay.
Our local alcohol ordinance, we govern, and then ABC is separate. So if an issue comes up just pertaining to the ABC license, I would report that directly to ABC, and we do our own.
And don't you, my recollection is that you send an annual report to the ABC, don't you, for?
Not for this, it's completely
Not for
separate.
this,
No,
okay.
yes.
And if I may, Chair Wardlow, Commissioner Wiscombe, the annual report actually is to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission would actually see these documents, these violations. So as I mentioned, so far the program has had great success. The local businesses have been really compliant overall. But if you had one that wouldn't comply and you had notices of violations and then fines, you would have eventually an action that there would be a hearing in front of the Planning Commission. There would be an action that staff would come and prepare and ask, maybe a suspension of the CUP or eventually a termination. And so the Planning Commission would look at that entire record. They would look at all the notices of violation. They would see what the violations are, the time they've had to correct it, the evidence for the failure to correct it. So that all would be here in front of a hearing before the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dorms. And my other question is, did the ordinance include an annual report to the Planning Commission? I don't recall whether it did.
Yes, it
did.
does.
Okay, so you'll be back again in another year. Is that right?
If I could speak to that through the chair. So the ordinance does require an annual report to the Planning Commission. It doesn't require a public hearing.
Oh, good.
And in the
Okay.
vein of Commissioner Balke and our staff time and PD's resources, we're electing to provide Planning Commission with that annual report, but not at a public hearing, with the exception of, as Mr. Doimus said, that if there were a violation case, that would require a revisit to the Planning Commission.
Okay. So did you say most of the violations were violations of just location of?
Correct.
Okay, and you've gotten rid of the airline bottles and all that kind of stuff?
We're not, for those that are deemed approved, which are the grandfathered,
Right.
they're currently permitted to have those. They just cannot be displayed, in the bins and out, so
They have to be behind the counter?
Behind, yes,
Okay,
correct.
so there are some establishments that can still sell the small bottles?
Yes, many.
The airline bottles?
Many,
Okay,
yes.
yeah. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you very much for the report and your hard work. I really appreciate it. It's nice to see implementation on an ordinance that took some time to do.
Thank you, Commissioner Wiscombe. Commissioner DeLuccio?
Thank you for the report. I wasn't here when the ordinance was done, but, so this ordinance is just for off-site, correct? This is an off-site, okay. Is there an
Correct.
on-site one also?
No, there was some talk, Commissioner DeLucia, there was some talk to have one, but at this time, no.
Okay, and if there's a fee involved in this, did the fee go to the police department? Because you guys are doing the,
The fee is cost recovery, otherwise we couldn't charge
Yeah.
the fee, Commissioner. So it goes to support the administrative process.
and what is,
And most of it is through the police
are we
department.
allowed to know what the fee is?
Sure, that's a public, I don't know the amount, what is it? 971.
971. The numbers are impressive. You do 96 visits, and you found 20 violations, and there's only one outstanding. So I think so thank you for doing such a good, thorough job on this. Do you announce that you're coming, or is it more spot checking?
No, I do not. I just, I kind of take it in areas of the city, and so I'll, do the east side or the west side or the Mesa, and then I just pop in and this year, it was quite a difference from when I started. I'd say everybody was, for the most part, in compliance. Everybody had the little bottles behind. I haven't seen anything another one is coolers to make sure that they're not, they don't have alcohol in cooler, the standalone coolers. So it was nice to see. The only probably difficulty, which was a little bit, was getting everybody to do the lead training and keep that and display their certificate. But other than that, everybody's very compliant.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, too. This is a good orientation, and for the report.
Thank you, Commissioner DeLuccio. Commissioner Peterson?
Thank you, and thank you for your report. It's very informative. I wanted to follow up on just two things. You inspect all retail stores that sell alcohol for off-site consumption. Is that
Correct.
So grocery stores, wine markets, convenience stores, all that.
Yes, supermarkets, every Bevmo, Target, anywhere you're going to be able to take it for off-site consumption.
Thank you. I appreciate that, defining the definition.
Yes.
I'm interested in what you said about container size, particularly as it relates to wine.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned something about like 300 milliliter bottles.
No, for the wine, Oh, no, for the wine, it can't be less than the 700, so
Okay.
the bottle. And then there's different criteria for the wine coolers, like then we'd fall into the multi-quantity packaging of the wine coolers.
Okay, so let me get this right. Businesses are not allowed to sell half bottles of wine,
Well, this is the tricky part, and I think this
the
is.
ones that are not grandfathered in.
Correct.
Okay.
And we don't, right now, we I only have, I believe, 2 that fall under the next level, which is the size restrictions. One local business just did, I believe, a transfer in sale of ownership, so that they then fell into the category of size restrictions, and they were great. They were compliant. So far, everyone in another market's opening, and they were extremely compliant. They understood. Usually when they reach out to the police department, I will talk to them through the planning department and kind of see what their business plan is, and we make it very clear that, and so does the planning division, you need to abide by the ordinance.
Okay, so if a business changes ownership, then they fall under the new conditions.
Correct. Or expand.
Okay. Knowing that you can't take a half bottle of wine on an airplane, what's the rationale, at least for like a half bottle of wine being banned in this?
So when you're looking at various cities in terms of best practices, as Commander Miller said, the cheaper in terms of the size, the smaller amount has increases nuisances activities. And so it's not just a unique phenomenon to Santa Barbara, it's unique for a lot of different jurisdictions and cities. So, these restrictions aren't just only based out of something that came about through Santa Barbara. It's what are some of the best practices that many cities have put together to curb these nuisances. And I think these reports show over the years, holding the sellers responsible through the land use provisions have been able to really, really curb nuisances. I remember when I first started the city, I would hear some places that had a lot of complaints or a lot of nuisance activities around the surrounding area. That has drastically reduced with these ordinances.
Okay, so I appreciate that. Just for my clarity, they're allowed to sell this behind the counter or not at all?
No, Commissioner through the Chair Wardlow, Commissioner Peterson. No, first of all, if you're grandfathered in, you can sell it, but it has to be behind the counter or away from the counter area. But if you're a new business after the ordinance existed, you cannot sell it at all. And the goal is eventually over time, you're going to have turnovers where you're going to have a city decades from now where it's all new businesses that they will not be able to sell these products at all. And the reason why we can't do the grandfathered businesses is because there's case law that prevents us from doing so, to do that. So,
Has there been any thought given to the consumer part of this in terms of being consumer friendly, not just a safety issue, but maybe folks want to purchase something that's not incredibly small, but it's not massive either. I mean, I don't know anybody, I don't think drinking a whole bottle of wine yourself is ideal. And so a half bottle of wine is about the size of one beer.
Sure. Chair Wardlow, Commissioner Peterson, when we did this, the ordinance did take account all those balances. That's where the hardship provision came in terms of development. But we looked at versus the issue of off sale, and the goal overall was, do you look at the consumer issues, or you will overall look at the effects of their surrounding neighborhoods? Do you look at the issues of having it being able to be shoplifted more easier? Do you look at the issues of it being able to be purchased cheaper? Do you look at the issues of, of being littered around the surrounding neighborhood? And so when you're looking at a balancing test for both, those were considered, and the goal, at least in terms of what was passed via Planning Commission at the time and through the City Council, was that the balancing factor did want to have these retail standards, and so that's why they're in place and continue to be in place.
All right, I appreciate this interaction.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Well, I really appreciate this report. I definitely understand the importance of the public safety aspect of this, right? It's very clear that these, the smaller bottles, especially, hard alcohol, small bottles, can create a nuisance and easy to steal and all of those things. And I appreciate the efforts of ensuring that all of those bottles are now going to be kept behind the counter and those types of things. I think my main concern with how it's applied, and I appreciate your kind of overview of this is about getting it right over time, is just that if we're, trying to encourage small mom and pop businesses, that when they do an ownership change, that comes and that will trigger a CUP and come before us, versus a Vons or Bevmo or larger corporation that when they do an ownership change won't trigger a CUP through their management agreements. And so I'm 100% with you on the small liquor bottles, but like craft beer is an entire industry that, smaller retailers do really rely on. And so I think it's unfortunate that just the way that the timing frame works, that it is going to be the smaller folks that get impacted on this, whereas people will just go now to Vons to buy their craft beer, right? Because you can still buy it one by one. And so that's just unfortunate, but I understand, the importance is about protecting public health and safety, and I do view, when you talk about the scale, right, that's more important. I just wish there was a way that we weren't disproportionately impacting smaller mom and pop owned retailers that are, trying to do this the right way, where we're not talking about hard alcohol, small little pocket bottles, because I think we're all in agreement about that, but the entire industry of craft beer, right? That is, has really boomed over the last 10 years. But I don't know how we address that, so I hear you, and I really appreciate all the work that the PD has done to really ensure that, public safety is the number one. So thank you. I was just going to give those comments to provide a little bit of context. I think this came up in relation to our previous hearing regarding a CUP for a small business owner. So this has been really helpful and informative to us to understand kind of your rationale and how this should go moving forward. Commissioner Peterson.
I'm sorry to add one more point, but I want to echo what you say, Chair, in that I think, especially for mom and pop businesses, I would disagree with the idea that eventually no half bottles of wine will be allowed to be sold in Santa Barbara once all the change of ownerships happen. And I think that that's something that we should think about. I want to make that clear. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right.
I'm going to jump in here.
Okay.
Maybe what we, this we're going to be beyond today what this is all about. But if we ever were going to go down that route, probably what we need to see is some crime stats. When doing evaluation of what's, not allowing those smaller bottles versus allowing them, and maybe by that point we'll have some history to tell us if I understand where you're all coming from, and it goes beyond just the small businesses. It's the way usage has changed also. But I would think we'd want to look at crime stats and other stuff before we even would entertain such a thing. Thank you.
And we can include those in the next presentation, reports, I say, not presentation.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all again for coming and explaining more of this to us in detail. We really appreciate it. All right, well, that closes this item. We will now move on to the administrative portion of our agenda. Would anybody like to give any committee or liaison reports?
Not today.
All right.
There was no meeting yesterday.
Oh. Commissioner, Delucci.
I'm good today.
Commissioner Peterson.
I think it would be helpful for us to look at the city council meeting from Tuesday regarding the 418 Milpas Street development and the appeal that city council, I know this was reported earlier, but it would be helpful for all of us to look at what happened and review the meeting.
Yes, I agree. It was an interesting hearing. All right, well, with that, it is now 3:03, and that concludes our August 14th Planning Commission hearing. Our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, August 21st. Thank you all for being here, and have a wonderful, beautiful day.